Chapter 1. Departure from Earth. The journey to the center of the Milky Way, into the abyss of Sagittarius A, would be the most ambitious voyage ever attempted by humanity. Vael, the lone traveler, stood at the base of Brahma Vega, a spacecraft designed to endure the unimaginable. Relativistic speeds, deep space radiation, and the immense gravitational pull of a supermassive black hole. This mission was the culmination of years of research and technological breakthroughs, spearheaded by Bharat Aeronautics and Space Research, SR. The agency, a leader in advanced space exploration, had spent decades developing the technologies needed for deep space travel. Now, with the launch of Brahma Vega, humanity was about to take its most daring leap yet toward the heart of the galaxy. Vael had spent the last several months in isolation, undergoing rigorous training. This was no ordinary mission. It required not just physical endurance, but the ability to withstand the psychological toll of deep space solitude. As he ascended the ladder to the spacecraft's hatch, he took one last deep breath of Earth's air, knowing it would be years before he could feel the warmth of a natural breeze again, if he ever returned.
Brahma Vega.
A vessel for the infinite, Brahma Vega was unlike any spacecraft ever built. Named after Brahman, the ultimate cosmic reality, and Vega, one of the fastest known celestial bodies, it was designed to push the limits of human exploration. The ship's propulsion system combined a nuclear fusion engine with antimatter thrust, allowing it to accelerate continuously, approaching a significant fraction of the speed of light. The outer hull was fortified with radiation-absorbing materials, shielding Vael from cosmic rays and interstellar particles. On board, the artificial intelligence navigation system managed all critical functions, trajectory corrections, life support adjustments, and emergency protocols. The ship's cryogenic chamber would allow Vael to enter a state of suspended animation during long phases of travel, minimizing resource consumption. Inside, the spacecraft was a marvel of efficiency. The cockpit housed a 360-degree holographic display, allowing Vael to monitor the vastness of space around him. The living quarters, though compact, contained everything necessary for survival: food synthesizers, a hydroponic oxygen system, and a neural interface for communication with mission control back on Earth. He strapped himself into the pilot's seat. The countdown had begun. The final moments on Earth. Through the reinforced window, Vael watched the BASAR ground crew make their final checks. The launch pad, bathed in an orange glow, trembled under the force of the igniting thrusters. He had trained for this moment for years, but now that it was happening, the reality of it struck him in full force. Final check complete. All systems nominal, the AI confirmed in its neutral, calming voice. A deep breath. The countdown reached 0. A flash of fire erupted beneath the spacecraft. A deafening roar filled his ears as Brahma Vega lifted off, surging into the sky like a comet breaking free from Earth's grasp. The G-forces pressed against his chest with crushing intensity, making it difficult to breathe. His vision blurred at the edges as his body endured forces far beyond normal human experience. But he remained conscious, his training taking over. Higher and higher, the sky darkened from blue to black. The roar of the engines gradually faded as the atmosphere thinned, replaced by an eerie silence. But they were not in space yet. Crossing the atmosphere, the gateway to the cosmos. 1 minute after launch, altitude 30 kilometers-sphere. Outside the spacecraft, the blue sky had deepened to a dark indigo as the ship pierced the stratosphere. The atmospheric drag was intense, causing the hull to heat up, but the spacecraft's thermal shielding absorbed the friction. 3 minutes after launch, altitude 85 kilometers, mesosphere. The Kármán line, the boundary between Earth's atmosphere and space, was approaching. Vael could feel the gradual easing of G-forces as Brahma Vega prepared to enter low Earth orbit before its final escape trajectory. 5 minutes after launch, altitude 150 kilometers, exsphere. The ship broke free from Earth's atmosphere. The blue sky was gone, replaced by a field of endless darkness, speckled with the distant glow of stars. Weightlessness took over as Earth hung below him, a breathtaking blue sphere against the void. Vael took a moment to soak it in. This was no longer home, just a planet behind him. The journey begins, accelerating toward the unknown. Now came the true test. Vega would continue accelerating, reaching velocities where the very fabric of time would begin to warp. The engines reignited, this time with a controlled burn. The ship lurched forward. 1 hour after launch, speed 50,000 kilometers per hour. At this point, Earth was quickly shrinking in the rear viewport. The curvature of the planet was now fully visible, with city lights flickering beneath a thin veil of atmosphere. 3 hours after launch. Speed 150,000 kilometers per hour. Vael was now well beyond low Earth orbit, heading toward the moon. The first celestial checkpoint in his journey was fast approaching. 6 hours after launch, speed 300,000 kilometers per hour, or 0.1 c, or 10% the speed of light. At this velocity, time dilation had begun to take effect. From his perspective, time still felt normal, but relative to those on Earth, his clock had started ticking slower. Lunar flyby, the first celestial encounter. Just 2 hours and 40 minutes after launch, Vega had already reached the moon, nearly 385,000 kilometers away. The spacecraft executed an orbital slingshot maneuver, using the moon's gravity to gain additional velocity. As Vael passed by the lunar surface, he saw craters bathed in an eerie light. The same untouched desolation that had greeted Apollo astronauts centuries before. "Mission Control, I have visual on the moon," Vael reported, his voice steady. A long silence. Then finally a response. "We copy, Vael. Due to signal delay, we're receiving you with a slight lag. Proceeding with telemetry tracking." It had begun. Communication with Earth was no longer instantaneous. A 2.5-second delay had already crept into their conversations. The farther he traveled, the greater this delay would become, until eventually communication would become impossible. The moon quickly receded behind him, and Vega continued its relentless acceleration. Leaving the Earth-Moon system, a one-way journey. By now, Earth and the moon were nothing more than distant orbs behind him. Vael was officially beyond the Earth-Moon system, heading deeper into space than any human had ever gone. His next destination, Mars. Projected arrival time, 20 hours from now. Vael leaned back in his seat. Solitude had begun. Ahead of him lay the endless expanse of the cosmos, the planets, the stars, the unknown. There was no turning back. The journey to the center of the Milky Way had truly begun. Chapter 2, The Passage Through the Solar System. With the moon now behind him, Vael was officially on his way into deep space. His destination, Sagittarius A Star, lay over 26,000 light-years away, an impossible distance for conventional space travel. But for now, his immediate journey was through the familiar realm of the solar system, a domain that humanity had only just begun to explore. Vega's nuclear fusion engines continued their steady acceleration. Vael monitored his trajectory as the ship picked up speed, heading toward the next celestial landmark, Mars, a red world in the distance. 12 hours after launch. Speed 600,000 kilometers per hour, or 0.2 or 20% the speed of light. The red glow of Mars emerged in the distance, a rust-colored dot against the endless void. Humanity had long dreamt of setting foot on its surface, and in the last few centuries it had become a second home. Colonies, research stations, and vast terraforming projects had begun to reshape the planet. As Vega neared, Vael observed the faint wisps of the Martian atmosphere. The polar ice caps shimmered faintly under the distant sun. Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system, loomed over the barren landscape, casting enormous shadows. "Mission Control, I have visual on Mars," Vael reported. A 5-minute delay followed before Earth's response arrived. "We confirm, Vael. Telemetry is tracking you as you approach Mars, proceeding with gravitational assist." By this point, real-time communication was no longer possible. Every message from Earth took minutes to reach him, and as he moved farther, that delay would stretch into hours, then days, then years. Soon there would be no communication at all. As planned, Vega used Mars's gravity to slingshot further into the solar system, increasing its velocity. The ship tilted slightly as the AI adjusted its trajectory, sending Vael on a direct course toward Jupiter. Projected arrival time: 2 days. By now, Vael's body had started to experience the subtle yet profound effects of traveling at relativistic speeds. Even with the ship's advanced inertial dampeners, prolonged acceleration was not without consequences. His cardiovascular system had to adjust to microgravity, causing fluid redistribution. His face felt fuller, his legs thinner, as blood that normally pooled in the lower body was now evenly dispersed. His vestibular system, responsible for balance, struggled with the constant shifts between weightlessness and acceleration. Dizziness had crept in during the first few hours, but he had trained for this. The neural interface of his suit sent small pulses to stimulate his inner ear, helping him adapt. At speeds approaching 20% of light speed, another unseen threat loomed: cosmic radiation. Vega's shielding absorbed most of the high-energy particles bombarding the ship, but even so, the increased exposure meant higher risks of cellular damage and mutations. His DNA repair mechanisms were working overtime. The medical AI had already begun counteracting the damage, monitoring his telomeres, the protective ends of his DNA strands. Without intervention, relativistic travel could accelerate aging at a microscopic level, despite the paradox of time dilation. Vael injected a nanomolecular stabilizer, a compound designed to reinforce his cells against radiation-induced decay. A sharp sting in his forearm, then a cooling sensation spread through his veins. It was just the beginning. 48 hours after launch. Speed 0.5 c, or 50% the speed of light. The sheer size of Jupiter was staggering. Even from millions of kilometers away, it dominated the view, an enormous sphere of swirling storms and endless clouds. The Great Red Spot, a storm that had raged for centuries, churned violently beneath the planet's thick atmosphere. Vega's AI adjusted course for another gravitational assist. The ship's trajectory took it dangerously close to Jupiter's powerful magnetic field, a region so intense that it could fry unprotected electronics instantly. But Vega was designed for this. Its electromagnetic shielding absorbed the radiation as it skimmed past the gas giant. As Vael passed, he glimpsed Jupiter's moons: Ganymede, Europa, Io, and Callisto, each a world of its own. Europa's ice-covered ocean was a glistening jewel, hiding the potential for alien life beneath its frozen surface. Jupiter's gravitational pull slingshot the ship even faster, accelerating Vega to 75% the speed of light. Next destination, Saturn. The strain on the mind, solitude and temporal displacement. Vael's body wasn't the only thing being affected. His perception of time was warping in ways he had never truly prepared for. As Vega neared 75% light speed, time dilation had become measurable. For him, everything inside the ship felt normal, but compared to Earth, time was moving slower. Days for him were now weeks for Earth. The realization settled in. He was becoming unstuck from humanity's timeline. The psychological toll of deep space solitude was creeping in. The neural interface helped regulate his circadian rhythms, simulating Earth's day-night cycle, but there was no true sense of morning or night, just the endless glow of distant stars. The ship's AI monitored his brain activity, ensuring he remained mentally stable. Conversations with mission control were delayed, impersonal, fading into mere data exchanges. Soon, they would stop altogether. The edge of the solar system, 9 days after launch. Speed 3,000 kilometers per hour, 0.99 c, or 99% the speed of light. The outer planets, Uranus and Neptune, were cold and distant, their blue hues barely illuminated by the sun's fading light. Neptune, the last true planet before the interstellar void, marked the final boundary of the solar system. Beyond Neptune lay the Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy bodies, dwarf planets, and comets. And further still, the heliopause, where the influence of the sun's solar wind finally gave way to the true emptiness of interstellar space. As Brahmavega passed Pluto, Vael felt a sense of finality. He was now leaving everything he had ever known behind. The AI signaled an alert. Solar system exit confirmed, transitioning to deep space navigation. The sun, now just another star among billions, was no longer his anchor. Ahead lay the Oort cloud, a vast shell of comets stretching nearly a light year from the sun. This was the true edge of the solar system, the boundary between the familiar and the unknown. Unlike the asteroid belt or the Kuiper belt, the Oort cloud wasn't a dense region of rocks. It was an enormous, scattered collection of comets and frozen debris left over from the birth of the solar system. These ancient relics drifted in deep freeze, orbiting the sun at incomprehensible distances, like disturbed only by passing stars or gravitational influences. Brahmavega's AI navigation system, AINS, automatically adjusted course to minimize collision risks, using predictive modeling to chart a safe trajectory. At speeds nearing the speed of light, even microscopic dust grains could cause catastrophic damage. Fortunately, Brahmavega's defensive shielding was equipped to vaporize incoming particles before they could pose a threat. Despite this, the ship's hull occasionally shuddered from micrometeoroid impacts, tiny particles that, at this velocity, carried the energy of small explosives. The deflector fields absorbed the worst of these, dispersing kinetic energy before it reached critical components. Vael sat strapped in, monitoring his surroundings. The journey through the Oort cloud was not instantaneous. Even at 99% light speed, the sheer scale of this region meant it would take nearly one full Earth year to pass through completely. However, relativistic time dilation had already kicked in. While nearly 370 days would pass for those on Earth, Vael himself would experience it in a fraction of that time. His shipboard clock, moving at a different rate relative to an observer back home, registered only about 52 days before he would fully exit the Oort cloud. Even with training, the psychological strain of deep space solitude was starting to weigh on him. He had no true day or night anymore. His neural interface regulated his sleep cycle, simulating the passage of time artificially. Conversations with mission control were becoming less frequent, with transmission delays now exceeding nearly a full year for a round-trip message. Meaningful communication was no longer viable. He was, for all intents and purposes, truly alone. As the days stretched into weeks, Vael made peace with the silence. He focused on physical conditioning, running through maintenance protocols, and preparing for what lay ahead. The ship's AI provided necessary companionship, but it was no substitute for human presence. One final alert flashed on his screen. Oort cloud boundary approaching. Solar system exit confirmed. Transitioning to interstellar navigation. Vael took a deep breath. The last remnants of the solar system were behind him. He had officially left humanity's cradle. Before him lay the vast unknown, the interstellar void where no human had ever ventured. Now, and only now, was it time for Brahmavega's true power to awaken. Chapter 3, The Passage Beyond Light, Entering the Wormhole. The Celestial Gate, a wormhole beyond the Oort cloud. The wormhole had been identified decades before Vael's mission was conceived. At first, astronomers mistook it for a simple gravitational lensing effect, an optical illusion caused by some unseen mass-bending light from distant stars. But as observational technology improved, its true nature was revealed. It wasn't just bending light, it was distorting space itself. Objects near the anomaly exhibited erratic motion. Some appeared displaced, while others seemed to vanish entirely from observation, only to reappear moments later, slightly altered in position. What the world had found, sitting just beyond the Oort cloud, was a naturally occurring wormhole, a theoretical shortcut through space-time that, until then, had only existed in equations. This discovery changed everything. The Sagittarius ASAR mission was no longer just a distant dream. It was a tangible reality. A passage through the cosmic gate could cut the journey from thousands of years to mere weeks or months, depending on the tunnel's structure. With careful calculations and extensive simulations, scientists mapped its entrance, theorizing its endpoint, somewhere near the galactic core. Vael had always known this moment would come. It had been part of the plan all along. But now that he was here, staring into the unknown, the magnitude of it weighed down on him. Vega's AI signaled the final approach. The ship had now traveled well beyond the solar system's boundary, past Pluto, past the scattered icy remnants of the Kuiper Belt. Now it drifted through the Oort cloud, an endless ghostly expanse of frozen comets and primordial debris, the last true remnant of the solar system's formation. The wormhole lay just beyond this frozen frontier. It wasn't visible in the traditional sense. There was no swirling vortex of light, no glowing cosmic whirlpool. Instead, the space ahead appeared subtly wrong. Stars near the event horizon seemed stretched, their light distorted like reflections in rippling water. Some points of light duplicated, flickering in and out of view. The very fabric of reality shimmered unnaturally. As Vega drew closer, onboard sensors confirmed what Vael already suspected. Space-time was warping violently at the periphery. The gravitational readings fluctuated, an impossibility under normal physics. It was as if space was folding into itself. The AI initiated the final trajectory correction, guiding the ship toward the precise coordinates where the tunnel's entrance was predicted to exist. A deep breath. The ship lurched, but there was no sensation of acceleration. Instead, everything around Vael stretched and twisted. The stars elongated into streaks, bending in impossible ways, spiraling into an unseen center. The concept of up and down dissolved. Time itself felt unstable, his thoughts flickered, momentarily displaced from his body. A sharp ringing sound filled his ears, or perhaps it was in his mind. His neural interface struggled to compensate for the sensory overload. Then, a violent contraction. Space collapsed inward and everything went dark. For a moment, there was nothing. No stars, no motion, no sound. He was nowhere. Then, emergence. Inside the wormhole, a universe folded upon itself. Vael's vision returned, but what he saw defied comprehension. The interior of the wormhole was unlike anything known to physics. It was not a tunnel in the traditional sense. It was a vast shifting corridor where reality itself seemed unstable. Light twisted in spirals, bending around unseen forces. Space stretched infinitely in some directions and collapsed in others. At times, he thought he saw duplicate versions of Vega reflected in warped mirrors of space-time, flickering between existence and illusion. The ship's AI struggled to keep up with the chaos. Readings fluctuated wildly, distances became meaningless, time dilated erratically. Vael felt unmoored from his own existence, his consciousness flickering between moments. The medical AI warned of temporal dissonance. His brain was struggling to process non-linear time. He glanced at the mission clock. Seconds had passed, or had it been hours? Time was fragmented, disjointed. The relativistic effects within the wormhole were unpredictable. He could exit this tunnel minutes later, or emerge to find centuries had passed. His hands clenched the armrests. The only choice was to trust the ship, trust the calculations, and hold on. Though Vega's shielding protected him from external radiation and gravitational shearing, the biological effects of transiting the wormhole were unknown. The first sign of distress was in his perception. Time flickered, his thoughts skipping like a scratched record. Then came the echoes, whispers of voices he had never heard, glimpses of memories that weren't his. At one moment, he was reliving the launch from Earth. The next, he was seeing something impossible, a future where he had already arrived at Sagittarius A. Were these hallucinations? Or was the wormhole playing with his perception of time? The AI monitored his brain activity, detecting anomalies in neural synchronization. His sense of self was fluctuating. The wormhole was not just distorting space, it was bending his very perception of reality. He reached for the emergency stabilizer, injecting a counteragent designed to reinforce neurological cohesion. A sharp sting in his forearm, followed by a cooling sensation. Slowly, the distortions eased. His mind anchored itself once more, but the question remained, what would prolonged exposure do to him? Somewhere ahead, the tunnel began to shift. The swirling distortion condensed, focusing into a single luminous point, a beacon of normal space, the exit. Brahmavega accelerated, drawn toward the threshold. The ship trembled as the fabric of space realigned. The AI executed the final trajectory corrections. Then, a final pull, a gravitational snap, and Vael was thrown back into normal space. Emerging into the unknown, stars, a billion of them, shining like fireflies against the deep abyss. But these were not the stars of home. The wormhole had delivered him. Before him stretched the galactic core, a luminous storm of cosmic energy, dense with interstellar gas, brilliant quasars, and the chaotic pull of the supermassive black hole Sagittarius A star. He had made it, but the true journey was only beginning. As Brahmavega stabilized in normal space, Vael's breathing slowed. His body felt the same, his mind sharp, but the reality outside had irreversibly changed. He had entered the wormhole within a universe he once knew, and now he emerged into one that had aged beyond comprehension. His shipboard clock showed 52 years had passed for him since entering the wormhole. Yet, the number flashing on his display for Earth's relative time was staggering, 28,001 years. A deep silence settled over the cockpit. Vael exhaled, staring into the endless field of unfamiliar stars. He had always known this was inevitable. He had studied the theories, run the calculations, prepared himself for the consequences of relativistic travel. But preparation and experience were two different things. His home, his people, his world, gone, or at least unrecognizable. The civilizations of Earth had either evolved into something beyond his comprehension or had long since crumbled into dust. The constellations would have shifted, the languages, the history, rewritten or forgotten. He was a relic of the past, now lost in distant future. For a moment, he let himself feel the weight of it all, and then he moved forward. Brahmavega's AI, ANs, ran immediate diagnostics. The ship had held together through the transition, no structural compromise, no major deviations from projected trajectory. The wormhole had spat him out precisely where it was meant to, deep in the galactic core, just beyond the accretion disk of Sagittarius A. Vael ran his own scans. The laws of physics still applied. The fundamental constants of the universe were unchanged. Gravity, electromagnetism, everything was as it should be. But he couldn't ignore the unease creeping through him. This space, though still bound by physics, felt different. The density of surrounding stars was staggering. Here, at the heart of the Milky Way, the sky was ablaze with light, a chaotic ocean of stars packed 1,000 times denser than the night sky of Earth. Nebulae twisted in vibrant blues and purples, great clouds of interstellar dust churning in the gravitational maelstrom of the core. Directly ahead, Sagittarius loomed, a supermassive void, swallowing all light that dared to approach. Its gravitational influence bent the very fabric of space-time, distorting the view of stars behind it into an eerie halo of stretched light. Vael had reached the center of the galaxy, but what awaited him here? His muscles had remained functional thanks to the ship's artificial gravity, but 52 years in isolation had left their mark. The AI had maintained his neural pathways, running continuous cognitive stimulation protocols, but still, there was an adjustment period. Would his mind still function normally in a universe so different from the one he left? And then, there was a darker question. Was he even human anymore? He had spent half a century alone, inside a bubble of warped space, disconnected from normal time. The long-term effects of such prolonged isolation on human consciousness were unknown. The phantom echoes, the temporal dissonances he had experienced inside the wormhole, were they truly gone? Or had his mind been permanently altered? The answers would come in time. But now, there was only one way forward. He activated the next sequence. Brahmavega adjusted its trajectory, aligning itself towards Sagittarius A. The mission was not yet over. He had traveled across space. Now he would travel beyond the edge of understanding. And whatever lay inside that abyss, he was ready to face it. Chapter 4. The Edge of Eternity. Approaching the abyss. Vael stared ahead at the monstrous shadow looming before him. Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way, stretched across the void like a rupture in reality itself. A churning, chaotic halo of gas and radiation encircled it, glowing with an eerie golden luminescence. Brahma Vega's AINs ran continuous trajectory simulations. There was no turning back now. The calculations had been prepared before his departure from Earth. Vael was to approach the event horizon, but not cross it. If he did, escape would be impossible. The accretion disk around the black hole was a violent storm of particles moving at nearly the speed of light. Space itself was twisted and contorted here, bent by an unfathomable gravitational force. Time stretched, light warped. The laws of physics trembled at the edge of oblivion. The deeper he ventured, the more time itself unraveled. ANs relayed the time differentials in real time. At 5 million kilometers from the event horizon, time dilation had already reached extremes. For every second that passed on Brahma Vega, nearly 2 hours were slipping by on Earth. At 1 million kilometers, a second stretched to nearly a day. At 100,000 kilometers, an entire year passed beyond him in a single heartbeat. Vael's reality remained unchanged inside Brahma Vega. His body aged normally. His mind functioned as if no distortion was occurring. But the universe outside, it was accelerating, rushing forward at incomprehensible speed. From Earth's perspective, he was now a ghost of the past, an observer from an age long gone. Humanity, if it had survived, would have evolved beyond recognition. Empires could have risen and fallen. The constellations themselves had begun to shift, altering the familiar sky of his ancestors, and he had only just begun his descent. What does reality mean here? As Vael peered into the swirling chaos beyond his viewport, he was struck by an existential horror. What is reality at the edge of time? The black hole's immense gravity distorted light, bending it around itself. He could see stars that had already disappeared from the universe, their images trapped in the gravitational lensing. Some beams of light had been traveling for millions of years, only to be bent back upon themselves in an endless loop. If someone had been watching him from afar, they would have seen a strange, distorted image of his ship, twisting, stretching, even appearing in multiple places at once. Brahma Vega existed in a liminal space between time and eternity, between observation and paradox. The paradoxes of the event horizon. As he drew closer to the photon sphere, the region where light itself orbited the black hole, strange effects began to take hold. 1. The infinite observer paradox. If someone were observing Vael from a distance, they would see him slowing down as he approached the event horizon. To them, he would never actually cross it. His image would become redshifted, stretched to infinity, frozen in time at the very edge. Yet from his perspective, time was flowing normally. He would cross the event horizon in what felt like a finite amount of time. 2. The causal disconnection. If he sent a signal back to Earth now, it would never reach them. Light itself could no longer escape at these depths. Any attempt to communicate beyond this point was meaningless. The message would be trapped, spiraling forever within the black hole's immense gravity well. Number 3. The twin paradox in extremis. If Vael had a twin who had remained on Earth, they would now be separated by tens of thousands of years. To his twin, Vael had been lost to history, but to Vael, only decades had passed. If he turned back now, returning to Earth would mean encountering a future that was unrecognizable. If Earth still existed, it would be populated by descendants of people who had never known his name. The final barrier, the event horizon. Ahead of him loomed the point of no return, the event horizon. This was where space and time switched roles. Outside this boundary, space was something you could move through. Inside, space became an unstoppable force pulling inward, and time itself became a singular direction, falling toward the singularity. At this point, even light could no longer escape. Vael felt his body tremble despite the artificial gravity of the ship. This was it, the edge of everything. He had gone farther than any human in history. He had become an observer of the impossible. He reached out, pressing his palm against the cold glass of the viewport. This was where reality ended. What lay beyond, no one had ever seen. Would he survive? Would he witness something no human mind could comprehend? Brahmavega's AI issued a final alert. Critical boundary approaching, decision required. Vael exhaled, staring into the abyss, and the abyss stared back. Chapter 5: The Descent Beyond Reality. Vael had always known this moment would come. It had been written in the mission plans, calculated in simulations, debated in scientific circles for centuries. But theory was one thing. Standing at the very precipice of the unknown was another. Ahead of him, the event horizon stretched like an endless cosmic ocean, a place where the known universe ended and something else began. There was no turning back. The final transmission. He had sent his last message moments ago, a simple log update. "This is Vael. I am about to cross the event horizon. I don't know if this message will ever reach anyone, but if it does, remember this moment. We are more than what we think we are. There is more to the universe than what we have seen, and I'm going to find out what's beyond." He had no illusions. The signal would never escape. Light itself couldn't flee the grip of a black hole, but he sent it anyway, not for anyone else, for himself. A final act of defiance against the crushing silence of the void. The warping of space and time. The descent was smooth. There was no sudden jolt, no feeling of acceleration. The ship's systems remained fully operational, and artificial gravity kept him from feeling the forces that should have been tearing him apart. But outside, the universe was warping. Light from the outside world stretched infinitely around him. The stars that once dotted the sky were now caught in an eerie gravitational lens, bending and distorting like reflections on a rippling pond. Looking outward, it was as if he was staring at the entire universe, condensed into a thin ring of light around the black hole. The deeper he went, the more reality unraveled. The AI's diagnostics began fluctuating wildly. Alert, temporal displacement increasing. Relative time flow diverging from external universe. For Vael, minutes were passing. Outside the black hole, thousands of years had already gone by. The twin paradox was no longer theoretical, it was happening. If he had a twin on Earth, they would now be separated by an unfathomable gulf of time. To them, Vael had been lost to history. Civilizations could have risen and fallen. The world he had once known might already be dust. Frozen in time, the observer's paradox. If anyone had been watching from a safe distance, they would still see him at the event horizon, never actually falling in. His image would remain there forever, stretched, redshifted, distorted by the immense gravitational pull. To the outside universe, he would never cross the boundary, but from his perspective, he was already inside. This was the infinite observer paradox, a contradiction where two realities coexisted. The outside world saw him frozen in time. He himself felt time flowing normally, carrying him deeper and deeper. Which was the truth? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. And yet to him, Earth was just behind him, only a moment ago. Time itself had shattered into a paradox. The pull of the singularity as he plunged further inward, he expected the crushing forces of gravity to intensify. He had read the equations. He knew what should happen next. Spaghettification. His feet should have been pulled toward the singularity with exponentially greater force than his head, stretching him into a thin atom-wide filament of matter. But it didn't happen. The ship's internal stabilizers held. The gravitational shielding kept him intact. More than that, something was different about this black hole. The singularity ahead of him wasn't behaving as expected. The singularity rift. The deepest part of the black hole should have been a point of infinite density, an inescapable dead end of physics itself. But it wasn't. Instead of a crushing, all-consuming singularity, there was something else. A rift. The AI struggled to interpret the data. Warning, causal disruption detected, spatial topology inconsistent, non-Euclidean formations present. The singularity wasn't collapsing into an infinitely small point. It was bending, warping, becoming something else. And then something impossible happened. The singularity opened. It flickered, an unstable window into something beyond space-time. It wasn't just a dense gravitational core, it was a tunnel, a passage to somewhere else, final threshold. Vael stared into the heart of the singularity rift. Was it natural? Was it artificial? Had something or someone created this? Or was this what all black holes truly were? Not just points of destruction, but passages, doorways to something else. The decision. The ship's AI issued a final warning. Critical boundary approaching, no return possible. Vael exhaled, his hands steady on the controls. There was no hesitation. This was the purpose of the mission. This was the reason he had come so far. Vega plunged into the rift, and reality shattered. Chapter 6, Beyond the Event Horizon, the Cosmic Fabric and the Science of the Unknown. As Vega plunged into the singularity rift, reality fractured. For an instant, there was nothing. No stars, no space, no time. Just an infinite void. Then, light. Not ordinary light, but a structured radiance pulsing at frequencies that defied known physics. It was as if space itself had become a luminous fluid, no longer obeying the familiar laws of electromagnetism. Vael's instruments flickered wildly, their readings fluctuating between impossible values. The concept of a singularity as an infinitely dense point collapsed under a new reality. The black hole was not a dead end. It was a passage. But to where? The breakdown of physical law. Vael's onboard AI attempted to make sense of what lay ahead, but every known model of space-time failed. The equations diverged into infinities, and relativity itself began to dissolve. The Schwarzschild radius, the calculated boundary of the event horizon, had lost meaning. Instead of a crushing gravitational core, there was a tunnel-like distortion, a rift in the very fabric of causality. This wasn't just a region where gravity was too strong for light to escape. It was a place where space and time had inverted, forming a topological anomaly, a bridge between realities. Hindu cosmology had long described the Brahmanda, the cosmic egg, encapsulating the universe in concentric sheaths of existence. Some interpretations suggested that beyond the material realm lay the Anantakoti Brahmandas, an infinite number of universes, each emerging from the breath of Vishnu. Could this black hole be such a gateway, not merely a collapse of matter, but a conduit into another universe? The anomaly of time perception. As Vael moved deeper, he felt his perception fracturing. One moment, his past and future coexisted. Another moment, time stopped altogether. And yet, somewhere beyond, the universe outside was accelerating away from him. His AI, still trying to measure the passage of time, displayed numbers that made no sense. Negative seconds, looping time signatures. His biological clock seemed to move forward normally, yet the external universe had advanced by tens of thousands of years in mere moments. This was gravitational time dilation at its extreme, but beyond even that, something deeper was at play. The Bhagavata Purana spoke of Lord Brahma's day lasting 4.32 billion years, while for Vishnu, entire cycles of creation and destruction passed in a single breath. From a relativistic standpoint, could he now be experiencing time as seen from a different frame of reference, one where the fundamental rate of time flow differed entirely from the universe he had left? Was he moving through a region where the metric of space-time itself was altered? The cosmic lattice, entering a higher dimensional structure. Ahead, the space around him rippled, not like a vacuum, but as if it were part of a higher dimensional structure, bending in ways his mind struggled to interpret. Mathematical models in theoretical physics, particularly string theory and M-theory, proposed that space-time was not merely four-dimensional, but embedded in a higher dimensional bulk. Could this black hole be revealing those hidden dimensions? The Vedas described the cosmos as woven from a subtle fabric called Akasha, the fundamental substratum of all existence. Quantum field theory similarly described space-time as not being truly empty, but filled with fluctuations, virtual particles constantly appearing and disappearing. Could this be what Vael was seeing? Was he drifting through the very weave of reality itself? causal reversal and the observer effect. Something else began to happen. His reflection in the glass moved before he did. His mind registered thoughts he had not yet formed. His instruments showed data readings that were later confirmed by experience, as if cause and effect had flipped. This was the paradox of non-linear time. It was as if the universe had ceased to function under the standard arrow of time. Instead, it was behaving as though quantum entanglement applied at the macroscopic level, where effects no longer needed causes in a sequential order. The Upanishads spoke of Ishvara Drishti, the perspective of the divine observer, where time was seen not as a flow, but as an ever-present totality. Was he now perceiving reality from outside time? Was he trapped in a state where observation itself determined what was real? The luminiferous ocean, a new cosmic scale. Beyond the distortion, something vast awaited him. It was not empty space. It was an ocean, but not of water, nor of any known substance. This was a realm where matter and energy were indistinguishable, where quantum fluctuations stretched across vast distances like ripples in an infinite sea. In Hindu cosmology, Vishnu was said to rest upon the Kshirasagar, the ocean of cosmic consciousness, from which the lotus of creation emerged. This was not a literal sea, but a metaphor for the primordial field of existence, a concept strangely resonant with modern physics. Could this be the vacuum energy field, the very foundation of space-time, where quantum potential gave rise to all possible universes? Had he reached a zero-point field where new realities were constantly emerging? If so, then this wasn't just another galaxy, it was another fundamental level of reality itself. The final threshold. Entering the beyond Vael had no control anymore. The Brahmavega was being drawn forward, not by gravity, but by something deeper. The ship's AI issued its final transmission, critical boundary approaching, no return possible. He had already gone farther than any human in history, but now he faced something even more profound, a cosmic redefinition. Was he still Vael, or was he becoming something else, something beyond individuality, beyond even time itself? The ship crossed the final threshold, and in an instant, what lies beyond, the new cosmos? For the briefest moment, there was nothing, no forces, no dimensions. Then, structure. Not a universe of galaxies, but something more fundamental. It was a field of infinite potential, where past and future coexisted as a single form. Had he emerged into a higher dimensional bulk, where multiple universes were being formed? Was this where all realities began? The Vedas spoke of Para-Brahman, the unmanifest absolute, beyond even the gods, beyond any describable existence. It was not a place but a state of being, an existence beyond form, beyond even the concept of reality itself. Was this what he had entered? Had he left the known cosmos behind and arrived at the origin of all universes? Vael tried to comprehend, but the moment he did, his thoughts dissolved. The universe itself spoke, and he finally understood. Chapter 7, The Language of the Cosmos. For the first time since his journey began, Vael experienced true silence. Not merely an absence of sound, but the absence of all things that had once defined his existence. There was no sense of time, no direction, no distinction between himself and the vastness that surrounded him. His thoughts, once bound to the rhythms of cause and effect, now felt weightless, diffused into an ocean of infinite awareness. Was he still inside the Brahmavega, or had the ship itself dissolved into this expanse, reduced to something insignificant in the presence of an entirely new reality? He was no longer sure, but something was speaking. Not in words, not in images, but in a deeper, more fundamental form, an expression of pure meaning, a transmission of knowledge beyond language. The Akashic field, memory beyond time. In Hindu cosmology, it was said that Akasha was not merely space, it was the eternal, formless substrate of all existence. Within it, the Akashic records contained every event that had ever occurred and every possibility that could ever unfold. The universe, according to this philosophy, was not a sequence of disconnected moments, but a vast interconnected network of knowledge woven into the very fabric of reality. Vael was now experiencing this firsthand. He did not see memories. He became them. There was no past or future. There was only an ever-present now, an eternal unfolding of all things. He felt as though he had lived countless lifetimes in an instant. Civilizations rising and falling, stars igniting and burning out, entire galaxies emerging from the void and dissolving back into it. Was this the fundamental truth of existence? That time was not a river flowing forward, but an ocean where all moments existed simultaneously. He tried to focus, to separate his own identity from the infinite knowledge that now surrounded him. But the more he attempted to hold on to himself, the more he realized his identity was nothing more than a pattern in the fabric of this vast consciousness. A universe of vibrations. The cosmos was not a collection of objects, it was a pattern of frequencies. Everything, matter, energy, space, even time, was nothing more than oscillations of a deeper, more fundamental reality. Vael recalled the Vedic concept of Nada Brahma, the universe's sound as vibration. The ancient sages had described reality as a song, a vast symphony of resonances where every element played a role in the grand harmony of existence. He could feel it now. The expansion and contraction of galaxies were not random. They were part of an eternal rhythm, a cosmic breath, the heartbeat of the universe itself. Even his own existence was a frequency, a note within this endless melody. Was this what the rishis had meant when they spoke of the primordial sound from which all creation emerged? A vibration so vast and fundamental that it transcended all forms, all dimensions? Vael was no longer moving through space. Space itself was shifting around him. Confronting the cosmic mind, then something changed. A presence, not an entity, not a god in the way humans had imagined deities, but an intelligence, immense, incomprehensible, woven into the very structure of existence itself. It was not separate from him. It was him. It was everything. Had he reached Purusha, the cosmic self described in the RigVeda, the consciousness that pervaded all things, existing before time, before form? Or had he entered Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb from which all universes emerged? Perhaps they were the same. Perhaps all gods, all myths, all philosophies were simply attempts to understand this infinite presence, this totality of being. It did not speak to him in any conventional sense. It revealed. Every question he had ever asked about existence, about purpose, about the very fabric of reality, was answered in an instant. Not with words, not even with knowledge, but with direct understanding. He now saw that his journey had never been about traveling through space. It had been about evolving beyond space, beyond individuality, beyond perception. He had reached the place where consciousness and the cosmos were one and the same. And now, the universe was waiting for his next step. Chapter 8. The Threshold of Creation. Vael no longer moved through space. He was space. His consciousness, once confined to a body and a mind, now extended across dimensions he could not have imagined. He was witnessing the universe not as an observer, but as part of its very fabric, woven into its structure. And yet something still pulled at him, a lingering sense of individuality, of self. Was this merely an illusion, a last remnant of his former existence, or was it necessary? The formless realm, the pre-creation state. Before him stretched an expanse unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was neither void nor substance, neither darkness nor light. It was potential, a boundless sea of existence waiting to take shape. In Hindu cosmology, this state was known as Mahashunya, the Great Void, the place where all realities originated before they were made manifest. The RigVeda had spoken of it in cryptic verses. There was neither non-existence nor existence then. There was neither the realm of space nor the sky beyond it. What stirred? Where? In whose protection? There was neither death nor immortality then. Had he reached this primordial state of being, the very fabric from which all universes were woven? The deeper he looked, the more he realized. This void was not empty. It was alive. It was breathing. It was Om, the eternal vibration, the fundamental resonance from which creation itself emerged. The quantum seed, the birth of a universe. Vael saw it happen, not in a way that human eyes could comprehend, not in an explosion of light or sound. It was a fluctuation, infinitesimally small, yet infinitely potent, A singular distortion in the vast field of potential, a moment where formlessness hesitated, and in that hesitation, creation began. The Upanishads spoke of Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg from which all things were born. The universe, they claimed, was not formed randomly, but emerged from an underlying order, an intelligence embedded in its very nature. Now he saw the truth behind the metaphor. It was not an egg. It was a quantum instability, a self-organizing pattern, a shift in the equilibrium of nothingness itself. One moment, there was only stillness. The next, there was motion, a spark, a wave, a cascade of energy unfolding across dimensions. And in that moment, time began. Space crystallized, laws emerged, structuring the formless into something tangible. Vael saw forces separate. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear interactions, all flowing from the initial fluctuation, setting the stage for galaxies, for stars, for life. And in that instant, he realized he was not just witnessing the birth of a universe, he was part of it. The architect's paradox, creation and the observer. A question arose in his mind, but the answer was already unfolding before him. Who'd created this? Had it happened on its own? A spontaneous act of physics? Or was there an intelligence behind it? Was the Brahman of the Vedas, the ultimate reality, guiding this process? Or was consciousness itself the creator? Vael understood now. The act of observing this moment was inseparable from its existence. The universe was not an independent machine that functioned on its own. It was a dynamic interplay between existence and awareness, between potential and observation. Just as quantum mechanics on Earth had shown that particles behave differently when measured, creation itself required consciousness. Could this be why the rishis of ancient India had described the cosmos as a manifestation of Chit, universal consciousness? Had he, by witnessing this moment, become an architect of it? The choice, return or transcend, a question lingered. What was he now? Was he still Vael, the traveler from Earth, the scientist, the explorer, or had he become something else, something no longer bound by individuality, by selfhood? If he wished, he knew he could dissolve into this vast ocean of creation. He could let go, become one with the fundamental consciousness that gave rise to all things. But something held him back. A thought, a memory, Earth, the world he had left behind, the world that had sent him on this journey. If time had no meaning here, if existence was fluid, could he return? Would he go back to an Earth that had already moved beyond him, an Earth of the distant future, where he was no more than a forgotten legend? Or would he awaken before he ever left, as if this had all been an instant of cosmic insight, a glimpse beyond reality before returning to his body? The universe whispered. The decision was his. Chapter 9, The Cosmic Design. Vael did not return. Not yet. The light did not vanish. The vast, infinite lattice of existence still surrounded him, pulsing with the rhythm of creation itself. And then he remembered. A memory long buried in the depths of time surfaced like a ripple across eternity. He was a child, standing beneath the endless night sky, his small hands reaching up toward the stars. His mind, too young to understand the complexities of the cosmos, was filled with a single innocent longing. I want to see where everything began. Not as an explorer, not as a scientist, but as a seeker, a devotee. His heart had always yearned for the source, the place where creation was born, where the universe itself awakened. And now a voice, no, not a voice, but the very fabric of reality itself, spoke to him. That wish was heard. The grand orchestration, the presence, the vast cosmic intelligence that governed existence continued. It was not by chance that you came here. Vael felt the meaning of those words ripple through the very essence of his being. The universe does not move by accident. It listens, it responds. And when devotion is pure, when the longing to return to the source is unshaken, creation itself conspires to fulfill that journey. His mind swirled with realization. Every event in his life, every decision, every moment that had led him here, was it all orchestrated? Had the cosmos itself guided him across the stars, through the singularity, beyond the limits of time, to reach this place? Vael had not simply discovered the source of creation. The source had summoned him. The boundary of knowledge, For the first time, Vael felt something akin to hesitation. He had reached the ultimate truth. He had seen the sacred machinery of the cosmos, the infinite intelligence that wove reality itself. Could he take this knowledge back? Would he awaken as a messenger, a being who could reveal to humanity the secrets of creation? The answer came as gentle as the cosmic winds. No. He felt it before it was spoken. No traveler may take knowledge from this realm into another. It was not a law imposed by force. It was an intrinsic truth of existence. What he had seen, what he had understood, could not be carried back, not in memory, not in words, not in thought. To return was to forget. The crossroads of destiny. Vael's awareness pulsed with conflicting emotions. He could go back, but what was left to return to? Time had passed beyond reckoning. The earth he had once known was gone. The people he had loved, mere echoes in the vast river of time. What is the point of returning, he asked, when the world I left behind has already passed into history? The universe responded, not with words but with pure understanding. A new vision unfolded before him. He saw Earth, not the distant future world abandoned by time, but one that felt strangely familiar. It was a parallel existence, a branch of reality where the same world existed, but history had yet to unfold. His parents had not yet met. He had not yet been born, and if he returned, it would be to this new Earth. The price of return. Vael's thoughts trembled. If I go back, will I forget all of this? Yes. Then what is the point? The presence, the infinite consciousness of the cosmos, responded with something that felt almost like compassion. You will not remember, but you will be more. Vael saw it. He would not return as the same person. He would be born with an elevated consciousness, an intuition beyond logic, an awareness beyond knowledge. He would be a seeker once more, but this time with an innate knowing, an unshaken certainty that the divine truth was real, that the cosmos was not an accident but a grand conscious design. This was the cycle of wisdom. No knowledge could be taken, but understanding could be lived. The final choice. Vael stood at the precipice of a decision that no one had ever been asked to make, one that transcended time, identity, and the very essence of existence. And if I do not wish to return, Vael asked, then you may remain here. The voice, both infinite and intimate, echoed through his being. Here, where form dissolves into infinity, where individuality melts into the eternal consciousness, where existence is no longer bound by a body, a name, or a history, but becomes one with the cosmic totality. He could remain in this state, existing beyond time, beyond form, immersed in the infinite awareness of the universe. But if he chose to return, the cycle of wisdom would continue. He would be reborn, not as the same Vael, but as one with an elevated consciousness, a more profound understanding of the divine truth. The choice was his. The universe did not wish to take away his free will. The decision to return or to stay remained in his hands, just as it always had. Chapter 10. The Return to the Beginning. Vael's heart beat loudly in his chest as he stood before the entity, the source of creation itself. The weight of his decision, the gravity of what he was about to choose, hung in the air, thick with anticipation. This was the ultimate choice, the one that would define his existence or his absence. He had stood before the cosmic entity, understood its depths, and felt the raw power of the universe coursing through his being. But in the face of this overwhelming presence, the question that haunted him now was not about what lay beyond, but what to do with what he had learned. Was it truly possible for a mortal to witness the truth of existence and remain unchanged? Could he return to Earth, to a life he had left behind, with no memory of this journey? No memory of the infinite cosmic consciousness that now hummed within him. The entity's form shimmered, and Vael felt a gentle pull, a nudge deep within his consciousness. The cosmic presence did not speak with words, but in the language of pure thought, vibrating the very atoms of his being. You are free, it seemed to say. The choice is yours, but understand that no one who has seen this truth has returned unchanged. You cannot bring this knowledge with you. You cannot carry the weight of the cosmos across dimensions. The journey home will erase all that you have learned here. Vael closed his eyes, the words reverberating in his mind. For the first time in his life, he felt the full burden of what it meant to be human, the limits of his own perception, the frailty of his consciousness. To carry such knowledge would mean to shatter the very fabric of human experience, to stretch the boundaries of what the human mind was capable of understanding. Perhaps it was mercy, then, that the universe itself had woven this barrier into his path. It had no need to erase his memory. It simply understood that the nature of the human mind was not made to bear the weight of infinite knowledge. But the most profound question still lingered in his heart. Why return? If he had learned the truths of the universe, if he had been given this glimpse into the very origins of creation, what point was there in going back? What would Earth matter to him after seeing the source of it all? The entity seemed to sense his thoughts, and once again its presence filled the space around him like a calming breeze. You return not for the knowledge you have gained, but for the life you have yet to live, it said, its voice resonating with a soothing finality. You return to fulfill your purpose, not as the person you were when you left, but as the person you will become. You were always meant to be here, but your journey is not yet complete. Vael understood the essence of those words. The journey was not about the destination. It was never about reaching the source of creation, nor about understanding the vastness of the cosmos. It was about living. It was about experiencing the finite, the fragile, the ephemeral nature of existence. The knowledge he had gained was not something to be hoarded or carried back as a trophy. It was something to be integrated, to be lived in a way that only a mortal could, through love, through pain, through struggle, and through joy. And yet that same realization left him with a profound sense of uncertainty. He had already walked through the infinite. What was left for him in the world of ordinary beings? The entity responded to his silent inquiry. You return because you have been blessed to see the divine, Vael. Your vision of this cosmic truth has transformed you. Upon your return, you will be reborn, but with a higher consciousness. The very sight of the divine source has granted you this gift. Your new consciousness will allow you to see beyond the limits of ordinary human perception. You will be able to guide humanity towards the greater truth, the divine existence that connects all beings, the truth that has been hidden from most for millennia. Vael felt a deep shift in his being, a powerful surge of understanding. He had not just seen the cosmos, he had been touched by its very essence. The divine presence, this entity, had imprinted its truth upon him in a way that could never be erased. In the grand scheme of things, his return was not a return to the past, but the beginning of a new journey, one that he could undertake as a vessel of higher wisdom. So, Vael whispered, his voice shaking slightly, I will return, but I will not be the same. I will carry this higher consciousness, and I will be able to help humanity find its path back to the truth. The entity's form seemed to pulse with approval. Yes, Vael, you will return with a heightened understanding, and you will be able to guide those who are ready. You will teach them of the greater truth, of the oneness of existence, of the divine that resides within all beings. You will be the beacon that shines in the darkness, the one who knows the way back to the source. But remember, this knowledge is not for everyone. It is only for those who are ready to awaken, who are willing to step beyond the illusion of separateness and into the unity of existence. Vael felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He had always sought the truth, driven by an insatiable longing to understand the universe, to touch the divine. Now, in this moment, he realized that his yearning as a child, the longing to reach the source, had been the very force that had led him here. The universe had heard his call, had responded to his heart's desire, and now it had entrusted him with its most sacred wisdom. But what if? Vael began to ask, still unsure of his place in this vast, unknowable reality. What if I cannot fulfill this mission? What if the burden of this truth is too much to bear? The entity's presence enveloped him like a protective shield. Fear not, Vael. You are not alone in this. The path you walk is the path of the seeker, the one who seeks to serve the greater good. You will face challenges, yes, but you will never walk it alone. The divine within you will guide you, just as you have been guided here. You will be born again, but this time with the wisdom to see the world as it truly is. Vael's heart swelled with awe and humility. This was his destiny. He had always known it, even when he was a child, dreaming of the source. The universe had planned his journey. His deepest wish had been granted, not just to visit the source, but to bring its light back to the world. "Then I will return," Vael said, his voice filled with resolve. "I will return to Earth, to a new life, and I will fulfill my purpose. I will help humanity remember its true nature." The entity seemed to smile, though its form was beyond human comprehension. "And that, Vael, is the greatest gift of all. Your free will remains yours. The decision to return, to guide, to teach, this is your choice. You are free to stay, to learn, or to move forward in another way. The power of choice will always be yours. You are free to shape your own path, even as you walk the path I have shown you." Vael nodded, feeling the weight of the cosmos lift from his shoulders, replaced by a sense of peace. His return would not be an end, but a beginning. The life he would live, the work he would do, everything had meaning. He was no longer just a man lost in the vastness of the universe. He was a being of higher consciousness, destined to lead others to the truth that he had seen with his own eyes. The universe had heard his calling, and now it was his turn to answer. Chapter 11. The Path of Knowledge and Devotion. Vael stood in awe, still absorbing the vastness of the universe around him. Even though the divine form of the entity had shown itself to him in all its grandeur, something in him stirred, a feeling that he hadn't yet fully grasped it. He turned towards the entity with a question, his voice filled with curiosity and a hint of unease. "Why do I still not perceive the universe fully? Why does it feel incomplete? Why do I feel as if my vision of you, of this reality, is less grand than what Arjuna saw when he beheld Krishna's cosmic form? His vision was filled with infinite grandeur, but mine feels limited. Why am I unable to experience the entire magnitude of the divine like he did?" The entity's cosmic presence shifted, as if considering Vael's question, and then it spoke in a voice that resonated like the very foundation of existence itself. "Ah, Vael," the entity intoned gently, "your question is a reflection of your journey, of the path you have taken. You arrived here through the path of Gyan Yog, through knowledge, through the pursuit of understanding. The seeker of knowledge believes that by accumulating wisdom, they can know the universe in its entirety. This pursuit is noble, but it is still tinged with the sense of individual ego. You are still, in essence, trying to comprehend the divine through the lens of your own identity, your own mind. You see the universe projected through your own limited self." Vael's heart sank as he processed the entity's words. The truth struck him with a quiet force. He had always sought to know, to understand, to dissect the universe with his intellect. Was that the reason his experience felt less than Arjuna's? The entity continued, its voice gentle yet filled with timeless wisdom. In contrast, Arjuna's vision was a result of Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. Arjuna did not approach Krishna as an intellectual subject to be analyzed. He approached Krishna with humility, surrendering his ego completely, opening himself up to the divine without the filters of personal will. This is why Arjuna could see the infinite cosmos unfold before him in all its grandeur. His heart was fully devoted, his ego dissolved in the face of divine presence. Bhakti Yoga removes the limitations of the ego, allowing the seeker to merge with the divine, to see the totality of existence without barriers. Vael's mind grappled with these words. He had always believed that knowledge would give him the ability to perceive everything, every cosmic truth. He had spent his entire life trying to understand, trying to grasp the universe with his intellect. But now, the universe was showing him that knowledge alone, no matter how deep, could not fully open the door to the divine. "But," Vael asked, his voice faltering, "if Gyan Yog brings me to this point, then how can I experience the true, infinite presence of the divine the way Arjuna did? How do I get beyond this limitation? The entity's form brightened, radiating a warmth that filled Vael's soul. Fear not, Vael. Your path is not yet complete. The journey that brought you here, through the pursuit of knowledge, has prepared you to carry the divine wisdom back to the world. But in your next life, you will walk a new path, the path of Bhakti Yoga. You will return, but this time you will be born with a heart that surrenders fully, without any remnants of ego. In that life, you will experience the divine presence in its infinite glory, unfiltered by the limits of self. Your devotion will open your heart fully to the cosmos, and in that life, you will see the truth of the universe without limitation, without the need to intellectualize it. Vael absorbed the words deeply. He realized now that the universe had a plan, a divine design that worked through time and lifetimes. His path of knowledge had brought him to this moment, but the fullness of divine experience would come with devotion. He felt a sense of relief and wonder. The ego, which had once defined him, was now beginning to dissolve. "And if I fail to awaken in this life?" Vael asked hesitantly, his voice tinged with the uncertainty that still lingered. The entity responded with compassion. "Do not fear, Vael. This knowledge is not to be born in one lifetime alone. You will return, and with each life, you will move closer to the divine truth. The seeds you plant in this life, your wisdom, your understanding, and your love for the universe, will guide your rebirth, bringing you ever closer to your final merging with the divine." A sense of peace washed over Vael, like a gentle tide that soothed every fear, every worry. He could see his future now, not as a collection of disconnected events, but as a flowing river, carrying him towards something greater than himself. "I understand," Vael whispered. He bowed his head in reverence, surrendering himself to the divine entity. With the entity's blessing, Vael felt himself being drawn forward, as though the very fabric of time had loosened its grip, allowing him to slip through its folds. His body, once solid and bound by the constraints of the material world, began to dissolve. What was once flesh and bone evaporated into an ethereal, subtle form, light, pure consciousness, unencumbered by the limitations of physicality. In an instant, his being expanded, shedding its earthly boundaries, and he was no longer confined to the space he once knew. Vael's consciousness surged outward, hurtling through the vastness of the cosmos. The immense distance he had traveled aboard Vega, the miles, the stars, the galaxies, was traversed in the blink of an eye, as if time itself had collapsed. He passed through nebula, bright with cosmic energy, swirling planets and distant suns in an unfathomably short span. He could feel the pulse of stars as they flashed by, a momentary flicker in the boundless void. The distances that had once taken him eons to cover now seemed insignificant, collapsing into the swiftest of movements, as if the universe itself had folded its vast expanse into a mere breath. It was as if every star, every planet, every speck of the cosmos that he had passed now came into sharp focus in his awareness, yet none of them mattered. They were all but passing shadows as he journeyed back to his origin. Through this cosmic voyage, Vael felt the warmth of life drawing closer. The vibration of existence, the pulse of creation, echoed like the heartbeat of the universe, guiding him. He was approaching a new beginning, a place he had known but not known, a place where life itself was about to renew. Vael was drawn irresistibly toward a comforting darkness, the womb of a new beginning. He felt it envelop him, welcoming him as he prepared to be reborn. The ethereal body, now fully aligned with the cosmic flow, settled into the embrace of the origin of life. The end of the journey. For now. The universe had heard his calling and had answered. Vael was about to be reborn, to live again with a heart that would know true devotion. The divine presence, once distant and veiled, would one day be his in all its boundless glory. And in that moment, Vael understood the eternal truth. The journey was not over. It had only just begun.